Chapter 242. Chu Luiwei was speechless. She felt more and more that Rong Xiu seemed to have already prepared and was just waiting for her to agree. "What if I don't come this time?" she asked. Rong Xiu glanced at her. "If you don't come this time, next time, you will come." Chu Luiwei couldn't help but laugh. "Your Highness Prince Li is so confident. What if I don't agree? Wouldn't those things be in vain?" "Oh, that's not right. Your Highness Prince Li can find someone else." Rong Xiu's tone was calm. "It will only be you. If you don't agree, I'll just burn it." Anyway, it was prepared for her from the beginning. If she didn't want it, then there was no point in it existing. Of course, he never thought about this. He was determined to get her. Chu Luiwei was stunned. He spoke with a calm expression, as if he was talking about something very ordinary. He didn't feel that these words were so shocking. She paused and finally asked, "When did you start preparing those things? Did Rong Xiu really like her from the first time they met? That ragged and blood-stained girl?" Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. "A long time ago." "A long time ago? How long ago was that?" Chu Luiwei wanted to ask more, but Rong Xiu had already carried her and stepped into the teleportation array. Countless streams of light instantly formed a barrier around the two of them. Their vision turned dark, and the two of them entered the void of the teleportation array. The two of them quickly returned to the forest. After coming out of the lake, the barrier around the two of them finally dissipated. Chu Luiwei turned around to take a look. It was noon. The dense white mist on the lake seemed to dissipate a little, and the streams of light below the teleportation array seemed to be hidden. From the outside, it was impossible to detect anything unusual. There is a barrier outside the lake. Ordinary people can't get close, so naturally they won't find this teleportation array. Rong Xiu seemed to have guessed her thoughts and explained faintly. Chu Luiwei nodded, and then he remembered something. "So you're saying that you deliberately let me in?" Rong Xiu glanced at Xue Xue with a faint smile. Xue Xue raised her neck proudly. "What happened? What happened? It did it on purpose. If it wasn't for him taking the initiative, he didn't know when his master would be able to get married." Humph. Dumpling looked at Xue Xue with disdain. Sure enough, the master was shameless, and the magical beast he raised was the same. Xue Xue bared her teeth at Dumpling. Dumpling swung its tail and faced it with its butt. Chu Luiwei could not help but laugh. For some reason, Dumpling did not seem to be afraid of Xue Xue, and even provoked her from time to time. Logically speaking, Xue Xue was a high-level magical beast, and Dumpling's level was much lower than it. There was a difference in level between the two, so Dumpling did not dare to do this. However, when she thought about how Dumpling ignored the black flying python's orders, she felt relieved. When she had the chance, she had to study Dumpling carefully. "Oh right, there's still the Qin Jiao competition today." Chu Luiwei looked at the swaying sunlight in the forest and suddenly remembered that there was a competition today. The competition should have already started at this time. Rong Xiu smiled. "You seem to care a lot about the Qin Jiao competition." Chu Luiwei nodded honestly. "The competition is not important. What's important is the rewards." Although she had already gotten first place in the warrior competition, since she had signed up, it was better to get more rewards. Seeing Chu Luiwei's bright eyes, Rong Xiu started to reflect. "It seems that I gave her too few rewards last time. Do you still want to participate in the Qin Jiao competition?" Chu Luiwei shrugged. "I'm afraid I won't be able to make it in time if I go back now." Rong Xiu smiled faintly. "If you want to participate, you can still make it in time." Jianghu had been anxiously waiting for Chu Luiwei's news in Zhenbao Pavilion. As he was worried that he would alert the enemy, he did not go out personally. Instead, he secretly sent out many people. However, time passed by bit. It was almost noon, but there was still no movement. His heart was in his mouth. He thought that if he still couldn't find her in the evening, he would have to resort to extreme measures. Just as he was waiting impatiently, he suddenly sensed something and took out a palm-sized compass from his bosom. That compass was used by his master to send messages. In all these years, his master had only used it less than 3 times. He did not expect it to be used now. The purple jade needle on the compass shook a few times before finally pointing in a certain direction. Jianghu did not hesitate and rushed out. Jiangnan Square. The entire square was very quiet. The arena was filled with participating Xian masters. As the Xian master competition required more concentration, everyone consciously kept quiet. However, the atmosphere of the competition was getting more and more tense. Bang! A soft sound was heard. In the arena, 3 stars lit up on the stone platform in front of a Xian master. That meant that he had already solved the first 3 Xian formations. That's Xing Yiming from Nanfeng Academy. He's only 18 years old this year, but he's already a level 4 Xian master. He's considered one of the best among these students. There are less than 10 people in this arena who are stronger than a level 4 Xian master, right? In the end, the first place should be decided among these people. Look, Shi Wanwan has also solved 3 formations. The Xian masters from Nanfeng Academy seem to be very powerful. Speaking of which, elder son from Tianlu Academy is also a Xian master. Logically speaking, the Xian masters he nurtured should be very outstanding. Why hasn't anyone from their academy solved the 3rd formation yet? That Si Ting seems to be his student, right? I heard that he's quite powerful, but I don't know how he compares to the others. Hey, isn't Chu Luiyue also a Xian master? She can even activate a level 4 black crystal Xian formation. Why isn't she here today? In the arena, Si Ting held a chess piece and didn't place it down for a long time. He turned his head to look at the empty seat beside him and slightly furrowed his brows. Chu Luiyue isn't here yet. According to her personality, there's no reason for her to not participate in the competition after signing up. Master also seemed to be a little anxious just now. I wonder if it has something to do with Chu Luiyue. He thought for a while, suppressed the uneasiness in his heart, and placed that chess piece down. Bang! The 3rd formation was solved easily. Si Ting solved it too. He seems to be a level 4 Xian master too. But his ranking is still quite low. It seems like Nanfeng Academy is going to be first. The crowd discussed softly. Situ Xingqian sat in her seat and seemed to be watching the situation in the arena, but her gaze kept darting to Tianlu Academy's side. Chu Luiyue actually didn't show up today. Cheng Han noticed her gaze and naturally guessed what she was thinking. He sneered. Xingqian, you don't have to look anymore. That Chu Luiyue must be scared, so she ran away at the last minute. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 243. Situ Xingqian said hesitantly, no way. She even activated a 4th level Xian crystal Xian formation yesterday. If she's here to compete, she shouldn't be too bad. Cheng Han didn't think much of it. You've been focusing on Celestial Physician, so you naturally don't know about the tricks of the Xian Master competition. Even though the Xian Crystal Xian formation is a 4th level one, it can't be activated by only a 4th level Xian Master. You have to know that this thing was originally engraved to make it convenient for mystic cultivators to quickly unleash mystic formations during battle and increase their combat strength. It's not that difficult to activate it. Chu Luiyue is only a stage 2 Xian Master now. He only got 1st place in the warrior competition because of some unorthodox methods. The so-called unorthodox methods were naturally referring to her blood ferret. Cheng Han thought for a day and still couldn't figure out how the blood ferret could directly swallow Heng Jingshua's force. However, there must be a reason for this abnormality. In his eyes, Chu Luiyue didn't get 1st place with his own abilities. Hence, he actually didn't think highly of Chu Luiyue. There were too many variables in the previous one-on-one competition. However, this Xian Master competition is different. You can tell the difference with one look. Situ Xingqian nodded lightly. Actually, she agreed with Cheng Han's point of view. However, based on Tianlu Academy's reaction, something seemed amiss. Did something really happen to Chu Luiyue? Situ Xingqian watched for a while and was curious. However, it wasn't easy to find out in public. That's true. There was another matter that made her feel uncomfortable. After yesterday's competition ended, she sent someone to find out about Princely Mansion. However, Princely Mansion was heavily guarded, so she didn't get any useful information. She was a little disappointed, but on second thought, that person always did things this way, so it was normal. Besides, this was the Imperial City. He would definitely be more careful than before. Luckily, there were some rumors about Princely Mansion in the Imperial City, so she more or less heard about it. However, she was even more surprised after hearing about it. That person had returned to the Imperial City for a month, but he didn't even leave the residence. The only time he went out was to attend the Crown Prince's birthday banquet. Most importantly, it was rumored that he had helped Chu Luiwei during the palace banquet. The rumors in the streets were more or less exaggerated. After all, outsiders did not know about the matters in the palace, so no one knew exactly what had happened. She didn't want to believe it from the bottom of her heart. She only thought that it was just a hearsay made up by everyone after dinner. According to that person's character, why would he help for no reason? Even if he did, there should be other reasons. After all, Chu Luiwei was still Crown Prince Rong Jin's fiancé back then. He probably wouldn't even spare a second glance at a woman like her. Situ Xingshan could only console herself like this. However, there was another matter that she found even stranger. He actually went to Tianlu Academy. On the surface, it was said that he was doing this to pay respects to his mother. However, he had not done this for so many years. This time, he must have other motives. However, she did not know what attracted him to Tianlu Academy. Situ Xingshan had many questions in her heart, and she wanted to see him personally to clarify them. However, he seemed to have coincidentally left the Imperial City these 2 days. I wonder if I can meet him here before the Qing Jiao competition ends. In the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon. There were only 4 hours left for the competition. In the arena, the Xian masters who had yet to solve the first and second formations became increasingly nervous. At this point, only by solving the first 3 formations could they hope to solve the last 2 Xian formations in the last 4 hours. Those who failed to do so were basically guaranteed to be eliminated. Plop. Someone suddenly fainted in the arena. Sun Zhongyan took a look and ordered the judges to carry the person down hurriedly. He then shook his head. Forcefully solving the Xian formation will only hurt yourself. It will only be harmful to your future cultivation. In actual fact, such a situation would happen in the Xian Master competition every year. However, no matter how much they tried to persuade them, there would always be people who refused to admit defeat and wanted to give it a try. However, Xian Masters were not warriors. Xian Masters relied more on talent and comprehension. If not, they wouldn't be able to improve much even if they studied Xian formations day and night. Reality was cruel, and no one had a choice. Finally, in this deathly silent atmosphere, someone stood up. Su Bai from Nanfeng Academy withdraws. He stood there with a pale face. His body was on the verge of collapsing, and it was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. Only one star lit up on the stone platform in front of him. The judges took back his wooden token and comforted him before letting him leave the arena. The young man's face darkened. He stared at the wooden token for a long time with reluctance before turning to leave. The onlookers did not look down on him and only sighed at most. He's already a 1 in 1,000 talent to be able to become a Xian master. It's a pity that only a few can become top-notch Xian masters. There's always someone better than you. The path of a Xian master really places a lot of emphasis on talent. With the first person withdrawing, it was as if a hole had been torn in the hearts of the crowd. Soon, there was a second and third person. Gradually, when there were only 3 hours left, half of the people in the arena had left. The rest of them were either truly talented and powerful, or they were still holding on for dear life. Bang! The stone platform in front of Xing Yiming was the first to light up with the 4th star. He was the first to crack the 4th Xian formation and entered the last round. The people from Nanfeng Academy could not suppress their excitement. Even Fu Yunshan could not help but stroke his beard and reveal a satisfied smile. Xing Yiming was their academy's student with the highest chance of becoming the Xian master. It seemed that he had not disappointed him. As long as he maintained this momentum, the final first place would definitely be his. Xing Yiming's activation of the last round had undoubtedly added an invisible pressure to the others. A few more people withdrew one after another. Soon, there were only a few people left in the arena. Not long after Xing Yiming, Su Feng from Taiyin Academy also caught up. Most people's gazes were focused on the two of them. If there were no accidents, the two of them would decide the final winner. The atmosphere on Tianlu Academy's side was a little stagnant. This was because they were the only ones who had not broken through to the last round. Suddenly, another person fainted. Sun Zhongyan frowned. That student was actually an outstanding Xian master from their academy. He did not know if it was because he was too anxious, but the force in his body collided, and he fainted. Now, the only person left who had a chance of continuing the competition was Si Ting. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 244. Everyone from Tianlu Academy fell silent. The others also noticed this and started discussing in low voices. I didn't expect Tianlu Academy to only have one freshman left. I'm afraid we won't get anything this time. Not necessarily. I heard that Si Ting is the eldest young master of the Si family. He has always been talented as a Xian master. Maybe he can make a comeback in the end. I think it'll be difficult. Can't you see that he hasn't solved the 4th level yet? Xing Yiming and Su Bai are about to finish. Right at this moment, Si Ting placed a chess piece on the board calmly. Bang! The 4th star suddenly flashed on the stone table in front of him. Everyone suddenly fell silent. They did not expect Si Ting to solve the 4th level at this time. Other than Xing Yiming and Su Bai, he was already in the top 3. Sun Zhongyan heaved a sigh of relief. As Si Ting's master, he knew Si Ting's potential the best. Si Ting had been deliberately hiding his strength previously, so he appeared to be lukewarm. However, he seemed to have the intention to fight for first place now. Si Ting was very calm when he entered the last level, but the people around him were a little surprised. Xing Yiming and Su Bai could not help but turn to look at him with subtle expressions. This Si Ting seemed to have underestimated him previously. Xi Wanwan, who was at the side, frowned. Her pretty face seemed to be covered with a thin layer of frost. She was originally very confident in herself, but she did not expect a freshman to beat her to it. She could not help but say, "I didn't expect you to be so good." Si Ting glanced at her and nodded expressionlessly. "Thank you for the compliment." After speaking, he retracted his gaze and looked at the chessboard in front of him again. The last level's Xian array was more difficult than the previous 4 levels. If one did not concentrate, it would be very difficult to solve it. Xi Wanwan was even angrier when she saw his reaction. She felt that Si Ting did not take her seriously at all. He was just temporarily in the lead. Did he have to be so arrogant? Xi Wanwan was unhappy, but she did not show it on her face. Right now, she had to solve the 4th level first. However, the more nervous she was, the more she could not find a way to solve the Xian array. Xing Yiming and Su Bai were famous, but if she lost to a freshman like Si Ting, would it not be too embarrassing? After all, she was still in front of him just now. Xi Wanwan was very frustrated, but she saw that Si Ting had already started playing his chess piece, as if he was already trying to solve the problem. She glanced at Xing Yiming again and saw that he was staring at the chessboard. He didn't move for a long time, as if he was still hesitating. She bit her lip. It was fine if she lost, but Xing Yiming had been waiting for this day for too long. Xing Yiming and Su Bai seemed to have noticed Si Ting's actions and glanced at him again. When they saw Si Ting place his chess piece calmly, their expressions changed slightly. They were all mystic cultivators, so they could naturally tell if she really knew how to do it or if she was just pretending. Was Si Ting so powerful? Su Bai laughed inexplicably and began to try to place a piece, muttering in a low voice. Interesting. Xing Yiming and Xi Wanwan looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Xi Wanwan pursed her lips. Xing Yiming can't lose. She lowered her eyes and looked at the chessboard for a while, but she felt that the lines in front of her had become chaotic. She held her breath and rubbed her eyebrows hard. She knew that she had reached her limit. If she forcefully tried to crack the Xian array in this state, She would only faint like the previous people and be forced to withdraw from the competition. She was afraid that she couldn't continue in this state. Thinking of this, she gritted her teeth and stood up suddenly. I withdraw. Her voice was especially clear in the quiet square. Everyone looked over and was a little surprised. Wasn't she Wan very hopeful before? Why did she withdraw at the last moment? The judges asked. She Wan, once you withdraw, it will be considered as you voluntarily giving up the competition. You can't go back on your words. Are you sure you want to withdraw? Shi Wan nodded firmly. I'm sure. After saying that, she lifted her foot and walked off the stage. When she passed by Si Ting, her hand moved slightly. However, this movement was too subtle, and her hand was hidden in her sleeves, so no one saw it. Si Ting, who was focused on cracking the Xian array, suddenly felt that something was wrong. He immediately raised his hand, but it was too late. On the chessboard, a transparent thread fell quietly. The moment it touched the chessboard, the thread disappeared instantly. It completely disappeared. However, the patterns on the chessboard suddenly changed. Si Ting knew that something was wrong. In the next moment, he saw the chess pieces on the chessboard fly up. Then they scattered and fell. Crackle. The chessboard, which was originally arranged neatly, was now in a mess. The crowd was in an uproar. The chessboard fell apart on its own? This usually happened when there was a serious mistake in cracking the Xian array. Wasn't Si Ting fine just now? Why did he suddenly become like this? Si Ting suddenly stood up and looked at Shi Wan. His voice was cold and angry. Shi Wan. Shi Wan had already walked to the edge of the arena. Her heart jumped when she heard that, but she looked very calm as she turned to look at him. What's wrong? Si Ting clenched his fists. You deliberately destroyed my Xian array. Shi Wan was confused. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Si Ting, you can't say such things. You can't blame me for not being able to crack the Xian array. Do you have evidence? Si Ting's face turned even colder. That thing would not leave any traces. He had focused all his attention on the Xian array just now, which gave Shi Wan the chance to do it. The most important thing was that he did not expect Shi Wan to dare to do it so openly. Fu Yunshan also frowned in dissatisfaction. That's right. You need evidence to speak. If you can't produce evidence, you can't just slander me. Si Ting clenched his fists gradually. Sheng Yiming looked up, and a trace of undetectable smugness flashed across his eyes. Su Bai narrowed his eyes and looked at Shi Wan meaningfully, but he did not say anything. Shi Wan tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled faintly. I know that you're Tianlu Academy's last hope. You really want to win. However, you can't slander me for no reason just because of this, right? Didn't I take the initiative to quit? She handed the wooden token in her hand to the referees. Her expression was relaxed, but there was a hint of mockery. There shouldn't be anyone left in your academy, right? Who said that there's no one left in Tianlu Academy? A clear voice was suddenly heard. Sun Zhongyan and the others were shocked when they heard the voice. They immediately looked over in surprise. They saw a slender and straight figure standing at the entrance of the arena. Tianlu Academy's Chu Luiwei is here to participate in the competition. Chapter 245. It was Chu Luiwei. Everyone's eyes were focused on her, and their reactions were different. Mu Hongyu and the rest immediately shouted in surprise. Lu, you're finally here. Chu Luiwei walked toward Tianlu Academy. Mu Hongyu couldn't help but rush over and grab Chu Luiwei's arm. She really wanted to ask Chu Luiwei where she had been for a day and a night, what she had experienced, and whether she was injured. However, when she thought of the countless pairs of eyes staring at her, she held it in and stared at her closely. She was so excited that she couldn't speak. Chu Luiwei felt warm inside. Sorry for making you guys worry. Mu Hongyu hurriedly shook her head. It's fine as long as you're fine. Sun Zhongyan couldn't help but size up Chu Luiwei. After confirming that she was fine, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Luiwei smiled and said, Something happened earlier. I was delayed by something yesterday. I wonder if I can continue with the competition? Sun Zhongyan immediately said, yes. Of course. Although there were only 2 hours left and Chu Liyue's chances of winning were slim, he still blurted out when he saw how calm she was. I don't think so. Cheng Han suddenly said coldly with a frown. The competition is about to end. How can she continue with the competition now? Since she's late, she has already lost the right to continue. Sun Zhongyan retorted. Brother Cheng Han, the Qing Jiao competition doesn't have such a rule, right? Lu Yu might be late, but the competition isn't over yet. Furthermore, she did sign up earlier. How can she not continue with the competition? Cheng Han hated Chu Liyue to the core. Stopping her from participating was a subconscious action. When he heard Sun Zhongyan's defense, he sneered. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. If she continued to participate in the competition today, what would happen if others followed suit in the future? Wouldn't that be chaos? Sun Zhongyan laughed. That may not be the case. Among the people present, there probably weren't many who would participate in the competition with only 2 hours left, right? In my opinion, this is not a violation of the rules. Instead, it is a display of determination. Cheng Han choked. In terms of eloquence, Sun Zhongyan was the best. He could even turn black into white. Seeing this, Fu Yunshan also disagreed and said, that's right. Brother Zhongyan, no matter how you put it, allowing her to participate in the competition with such little time remaining is truly somewhat inappropriate. Sun Zhongyan put his hands behind his back and smiled faintly. Could it be that Brother Yunshan is afraid that Lu Yu will overtake your students in the last 2 hours? Fu Yunshan's face stiffened. This was a blatant provocation. However, it was really useful. If he still disagreed, wouldn't he be indirectly admitting that his student was inferior to Chu Liyue? He snorted coldly. Since you've said so, I naturally have no reason to object. However, this is the only time. Sun Zhongyan then looked at Cheng Han. What do you think, Brother Cheng Han? Even Fu Yunshan had agreed. If he still objected, he would appear even more petty. Cheng Han waved his sleeves. Since you insist, go ahead. I really don't believe that Chu Liyue, a stage 2 Xian master, can do anything. Situ Xingchen glanced at Chu Liyue and felt uneasy for some reason. Mentor, are we really going to allow her to continue participating just like that? This doesn't seem appropriate, right? So what if it's inappropriate? Can't you see that Sun Zhongyan is clearly trying to help Chu Liyue? Chu Liyue doesn't seem to be his disciple, but for some reason he cares a lot about Chu Liyue. As Cheng Han spoke, the corners of his lips twitched in disdain. It's probably because he saw that their academy doesn't have anyone else who can participate, so he thought of a way to make up for it. However, it's really wishful thinking to let Chu Liyue help them regain their face. Let's just watch the show. If Chu Liyue can't even solve the first round, it'll be the biggest joke. Seeing that the two of them had relented, Sun Zhongyan felt more at ease. Chu Liyue said gratefully, "Thank you, Elder Sunday." Sun Zhongyan waved his hands. "What's there to thank me for? Just go up. There are only 2 hours left before the competition. You just have to do your best. Don't think too much about the rest." Actually, he didn't have much hope in his heart. Chu Liyue lightly nodded. "I'll definitely do my best." After saying that, she walked to the side of the referee and took her wooden token. Shi Wanwan furrowed her brows and looked at her. As she ranked behind Chu Liyue in the warrior competition the day before, Shi Wanwan was both jealous and fearful of Chu Liyue. When she saw the small red ball squatting on Chu Liyue's shoulder, she was a little fearful, so her attitude naturally wasn't as arrogant as when she was with Si Ting. She forced herself to maintain a calm expression. "I thought that you wouldn't come to the Xian Master competition today since you won first place in the warrior competition." Chu Liyue glanced at her lightly, and her lips curved up slightly. "Why wouldn't I come? If I didn't come, how would I be able to see such a good show?" As she spoke, her gaze seemed to sweep past Shi Wanwan's hand. Shi Wanwan was shocked. Could it be that Chu Liyue knew? How could that be? She did it so silently that even the judges standing at the side didn't notice. Chu Liyue had just returned, so how could she have seen it? She must be tricking her. Shi Wanwan revealed a somewhat stiff smile. "I couldn't tell that you and Si Ting seem to be quite close. Do you also think that I did something that caused his failure? Chu Luiwei smiled even more deeply. This has nothing to do with friendship. It has to do with judgment. She seemed to have a headache as she tapped her eyes. My eyes can't bear to see dirty things. Shi Wanwan shuddered for no reason. The temperature was just right, and Chu Luiwei was smiling in front of her, but she suddenly felt a chill from the bottom of her feet. It was as if she had seen through everything. She looked away nervously and guiltily, as if she didn't want to say anything more. She turned around and left. Chu Luiwei stared at her back view for a while and found it funny. She really didn't know whether to call Shi Wanwan stupid or stupid. Did she really think that no one would notice her dirty tricks? But now was not the time to pursue this. She quickly retracted her gaze and walked towards the stage. She met Si Ting. The two of them looked at each other. Si Ting's expression was a little complicated. Finally he said, "Be careful. Just do your best." Chu Luiwei nodded with a smile. This time, Si Ting was indeed a pity. According to his true abilities, he could definitely get first place. Unfortunately, the despicable Shi Wanwan appeared halfway. The two of them brushed past each other. Chu Luiwei found her position according to the number on the wooden board. On the chessboard, there weren't even any chess pieces placed. Everything seemed to have not been started yet. She held her breath and focused. With a light twist of her wrist, the lines on the chessboard changed. The first round immediately appeared in front of her. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 246. I really don't know what Chu Luiwei is thinking. Why is she participating at this time? There are only 2 hours left. What else can she do? Yeah. Sheng Yiming and Su Bai are both true geniuses, but they also spent nearly a day to solve the 4th round and enter the final round. Isn't she just making a fool of herself by coming here now? You have to think for Tianlu Academy. They only have Chu Luiwei left now. Only one? You're saying it as if she can really win, huh? Almost everyone was not optimistic about Chu Luiwei. Even the people from Tianlu Academy were worried. Although no one said anything, the atmosphere was very solemn. This was especially so after seeing Si Ting return. Even Si Yang, who was always jumpy, did not dare to go forward and say anything. He could only obediently stay at the side and try his best to reduce his presence. He could not casually provoke Big Brother in his current mood. He clasped his hands together and started praying sincerely in his heart. Damn pervert, you must get first place. You must get first place. Suddenly, there was a commotion around the arena. Si Yang turned his head in surprise and saw that everyone was looking at Chu Luiwei with subtle expressions. He followed their gazes and immediately saw that a star had lit up on the stone platform in front of Chu Luiwei. *CK. Si Yang rubbed his eyes hard and looked at it carefully again. That's right. Chu Luiwei had really solved the first round. She had entered the second round. Isn't this too fast? She was called a damn pervert, but she was really that perverted. Not only Si Yang, but everyone in the arena was stunned by Chu Luiwei's extraordinary speed. Wait, did I see wrongly? Chu Luiwei has actually solved the first Xian formation? No, you didn't see wrongly. I think so too. It seems to be true. It can't be. Didn't she just go up? Although the difficulty increases with each level, the first round shouldn't be so easy to solve, right? Didn't you trap a lot of people just now? How did she do it? This commotion also attracted the attention of Sheng Yiming and Su Bai. Both of them turned to look at Chu Luiwei. The first star had indeed lit up on the stone platform in front of her. As for her, her expression was still calm and collected, as if she didn't realize what a shocking thing she had just done. To be able to be so calm, he was either too focused, or he already had a card up his sleeve. Su Bai's expression was a little playful, but his eyes were a little more solemn. Sheng Yiming frowned slightly, and an inexplicable sense of irritation arose in his heart. From the first to the 4th stage, he had always been the first to clear it. However, even for him, he still spent an entire incense stick's worth of time on the first stage. However, Chu Luiwei seemed to have only glanced at it once before he unlocked it. Chu Luiyue was only a level 2 mystic cultivator, so logically speaking, it was absolutely impossible for him to be this fast. Could it be that the first stage was a Xian formation that she had seen before? It seemed that this was the only reason that could explain how she could solve the first stage so quickly. Sheng Yiming suppressed the irritation in his heart and laughed somewhat self-deprecatingly. He was really too nervous. Even if Chu Luiyue had coincidentally unlocked the first stage, there were still the second, third, and fourth stages. These 2 hours were simply not enough for her to catch up to him. Thinking of this, he felt slightly more at ease. However, not long after, a familiar sound sounded again. Bang! That was the sound of a Xian formation being unlocked. Sheng Yiming's heart trembled, and he almost subconsciously turned around. Sure enough, he saw that the second star had already lit up on the stone platform in front of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue had actually successfully passed the second stage. The spectators became even more restless. The first stage was simple, so it was understandable, but how could she even unlock the second stage so quickly? This speed had already beaten everyone in the competition today. At this time, Cheng Han already felt that something was wrong. He could not help but look at Sun Zhongyan with a face full of suspicion. How could a mere level 2 mystic cultivator solve it so quickly? Could it be that she coincidentally saw a similar Xian formation before? Sun Zhongyan naturally understood what he meant, and his expression turned serious. But, Brother Cheng Han, are you suspecting that I saw through the questions? Of course not. Brother Zhongyan has always been honest. Why would you do such a despicable thing? I'm just a little curious. How could Chu Luiyue be so successful? Sun Zhongyan was so angry that he laughed instead. He raised his voice and said, although the chessboard used for the Xian Master competition was provided by our Tianlu Academy, the 5 Xian formations used in the competition were jointly decided by the 3 academies. If there's a possibility that I saw through the questions, then Brother Cheng Han and Brother Yunshan must be involved as well, right? Fu Yunshan immediately said, Brother Zhongyan, don't misunderstand. Brother Zhongyan, please don't misunderstand. I didn't mean that. However, I'm also a little curious. How exactly did Chu Luiyue solve it so quickly? Sun Zhongyan sneered. What else can it be? Of course, it's because she's talented. This answer was so self-righteous that Fu Yunshan and Cheng Han did not know how to reply for a while. Seeing that the two of them still wanted to argue, Sun Zhongyan shook his sleeves. If your students can't do it, can't others do it? This sentence completely shut the two of them up. 15 minutes passed very quickly. Bang! A familiar sound rang out. Everyone looked over and saw that the third star was already shining brightly on the stone platform in front of Chu Luiyue. The originally restless crowd gradually quietened down. At this point, they finally realized that Chu Luiyue did not solve the Xian formations so quickly because of luck. Sun Zhongyan's words turned out to be true. Her innate talent was really rare. Chu Luiyue calmly watched the chess pieces on the chessboard change. Very quickly, the fourth Xian formation appeared. This time, the people who had all sorts of suspicions completely shut their mouths. If Chu Luiyue was not considered a genius, then no one would dare to call themselves that. Now, they were only concerned about one thing: whether Chu Luiyue could solve the 4th and 5th levels in the remaining hour. First place. The smile on Su Bai's face had already disappeared. Sheng Yiming's hand, which was holding a chess piece, also began to tremble slightly. Even without looking back, they could guess what had happened. Now, they could only hope that Chu Luiyue would not continue to catch up. Click. Chu Luiyue placed a chess piece. The two of them were shocked. She actually started to solve the 4th level so quickly? Immediately after, the sound of chess pieces landing on the chessboard could be heard. Chu Luiyue's movements were smooth, and each sound was like a death sentence, echoing in the ears of Sheng Yiming and Cheng Han. If one looked carefully, fine beads of sweat had already seeped out of their foreheads. No, they had to solve the last few steps quickly. However, the more they thought about it, the harder it was to succeed. On the contrary, Chu Luiyue's movements behind them paused, and she quieted down. Sheng Yiming and Cheng Han looked at each other and then turned back to look. Chu Luiyue was holding a chess piece and looking at the two of them with a smile. Sorry to keep you waiting. With that, she placed a chess piece with a bang. Bang. The fourth star lit up at the same time. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 247. Everyone stared intently at Chu Luiwei and the 4 stars that lit up in front of her. She had actually solved 4 stages consecutively and reached the last stage in such a short period of time. As long as she could solve the last Xian formation successfully, she would be the first Xian master. Previously, everyone had thought that Chu Luiwei entering the competition with only 2 hours left was a joke. Now, they finally understood that Chu Luiwei had come prepared. She clearly had the ability to fight for first place. Finally, someone could not sit still any longer. Brother Zhongyan, shouldn't you give us an explanation now? Cheng Han's face was cold, and he looked like he was looking for trouble. Let's not talk about the first 3 stages. The 4th stage is a level 4 Xian formation. Chu Luiwei is only a level 2 Xian master. How could she solve it? And so quickly? I request that Chu Luiwei be examined immediately. Fu Yunshan glanced at him. Although he did not say anything, he was clearly skeptical about this matter. Sun Zhongyan knew what he was thinking and immediately refused. The competition is not over yet. How can we stop? If Brother Cheng Han must be examined, then the other 2 will have to be examined too. Cheng Han sneered. I'm not the only one. Even the others here are suspicious of Chu Luiwei. How could a mere level 2 Xian master be so capable? Even if she was talented, she would not be able to do this. How do you know that she would not be able to do this? Not only was Sun Zhongyan not angry, but he also looked around and revealed a meaningful smile. Everyone may have heard that Lu Yu only entered Tian Lu Academy 2 months ago. However, there is one thing that you might not know. Lu Yu only started cultivating as a Xian master after she entered the academy. Looking at everyone's shocked expressions, he snorted. This means that Lu Yu only used 2 months to go from an ordinary person to a level 2 Xian master. Everyone was dead silent. Their eyes were filled with shock. Sun Zhongyan's words were too impactful and shocking. Impossible! Cheng Han was the first to react and immediately refuted. How is it impossible? Everyone in the Imperial City has heard about this. Our academy's elders, teachers, and even students can testify. Sun Zhongyan smiled like a sly old fox. Could it be that so many people are saying the same thing just to help Chu Luiwei cover up her lie? Cheng Han was instantly speechless, and his mind went blank. In reality, he knew that since Sun Zhongyan dared to say this in public, it must be true. At the very least, he could confirm that what he said was true. He could not help but look at Chu. There was such a huge commotion around her, but she, the person involved, seemed to be completely unaffected by it. She continued to break the profound formation with a calm expression. The uneasiness in his heart became stronger. Of the Xian masters. Of Xian master. If you still have any doubts after the competition, it won't be difficult to conduct an inspection. Of Cheng Han. Of course. Of Zaf the Xian master. Cheng Han did not speak for a long time. Fu Yunshan was also shocked for a long time. After thinking about it, he could only hope that Xing Yiming could solve the last level before Chu Luiwei. Wishes were beautiful, but things often went against one's wishes. Fu Yunshan quickly realized that Xing Yiming's condition was not very good. He sat there and stared at the chessboard, but he did not move for a long time. Even Su Bai, who was beside him, had already started to solve the last level, but Xing Yiming did not seem to have any clue. Fu Yunshan knew Xing Yiming very well. When he saw him like this, he immediately knew that something was wrong. Xing Yiming was good at everything except for one thing: he was too arrogant. He wanted to do his best in everything. If he lost to someone occasionally, he would enter the academy's library and study the Xian formation. He would often not come out for a day and a night. For this Qingjiao competition, he had prepared for a long time before the competition and was determined to get first place. But now, Chu Liyue's appearance had obviously put a lot of pressure on him. Shi Wanwan had already returned to her seat, but when she saw the situation in the arena, her heart was in her mouth again. She really should not have left so early. If she had known that there was still Chu Luiwei, she would have eliminated her first. But it was too late to say anything now. She did not know if Xing Yiming could be stabilized. Chu Luiwei placed another piece. There was a slight fluctuation on the chessboard in front of her. Xing Yiming and Su Bai knew very well what this fluctuation meant. Chu Luiwei had found the correct solution. As long as she was given more time, she might really be able to get first place before them. Su Bai also followed up with a piece. The same fluctuation immediately appeared on his chessboard. Xing Yiming looked at him in shock. Su Bai just smiled and ignored him. This smile immediately made Xing Yiming realize that Su Bai had been hiding his strength all this time. Su Bai was always behind him every time. He originally thought that it was because of the difference in strength, but he did not expect that whether it was Si Ting, Su Bai, or Chu Luiwei, who had appeared now, they all seemed to be stronger than him. He thought that he was the most outstanding one and had been advancing triumphantly. In reality, he was just a joke in their eyes. If he lost this time, Xing Yiming clenched the chess piece in his hand tightly as his body tensed up. He tried hard to see the lines on the chessboard in front of him, but he was so anxious that he could not focus at all. As for thinking, there was no need to mention it. If this continued, click. Su Bai was one step ahead. Chu Luiwei followed closely behind. They placed a piece almost at the same time. Hearing their movements, Xing Yiming's hand trembled slightly, and he actually crushed the chess piece. This small commotion immediately attracted the attention of many people. For a moment, discussions broke out. Xing Yiming felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Chu Luiwei looked up and glanced at him indifferently as the corners of his mouth curled up. Even if someone like Xing Yiming had some talent, he would not be able to go far on the path of a Xian master. Sure enough, Xing Yiming took a deep breath and wanted to pick up another chess piece. However, his hand trembled so much that it took him a while to pick up the chess piece. He looked at the chessboard in frustration. In a moment of anxiousness, he actually placed the chess piece in a random position. The chessboard shook violently. Xing Yiming was shocked. He had made a wrong move, and this game was ruined. Sensing the chaotic energy on the chessboard, an extremely dangerous thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Immediately, his hand swept across the chessboard uncontrollably. The chessboard was in chaos. The energy on the Xian array immediately exploded and rushed out in all directions. Chu Luiwei's eyes sharpened as he picked up the chessboard. Digression. Why am I either sleeping early or losing sleep? I'm really drunk. I already owe 4 updates today. The remaining updates are at noon. I have to find time to make up for what I owe. Asterisk sob asterisk sob asterisk sob asterisk sob asterisk sob star. Chapter 248. Su Bai realized that something was wrong and quickly got up as well, but he was still a step too late. Crash! The chessboard in front of him was affected by the force of Xing Yiming's attack and instantly flipped over. The Xian array, which had been partially cracked, became a mess in the blink of an eye. Su Bai's face instantly turned pale. Xing Yiming did it on purpose. He knew that he was no match for them, but he took the opportunity to destroy their Xian array and forcefully stop the competition. He glared fiercely at Xing Yiming. Xing Yiming was the closest and was affected the most. He fell directly to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, when he saw the chess pieces scattered on the ground from the corner of his eye, he felt an inexplicable sense of relief. This time, no one could continue. The sudden situation in the arena immediately attracted everyone's attention. Fu Yunshan's expression changed when he saw Xing Yiming's reaction. What's going on? A guilty look appeared on Xing Yiming's face. Ding, I'm sorry. It's all because of my mistake. It's easy for you to say. Now that Su Bai's chessboard is destroyed, what should we do? How are you going to compensate him? Cheng Han was already in a bad mood. He could not hold back his anger when he saw this situation. He saw clearly that Su Bai was successfully cracking the Xian array, but he was interrupted by Xing Yiming. As a Xian master, you should know how much energy it takes to crack a Xian array. Now, all of this has been ruined by you. Their academy's last hope was on Su Bai. It did not matter if Xing Yiming was useless, but he actually dared to drag Su Bai down with him. Sun Zhongyan frowned and said, "Since it's like this, I'm afraid the competition will be temporarily suspended." However, Cheng Han was unwilling. The competition was going well, how can it be suspended just like that? The progress of the previous 3 people was already different. If it was restarted, it would be too unfair. He originally thought that Chu Luiwei was already troublesome enough, but he did not expect Xing Yiming to be so troublesome. Sun Zhongyan was also in a bad mood. Everyone could see that Xing Yiming was starting to fall behind. Lu Yu originally had hopes of competing with Su Bai. Now that they had to redo it, Lu Yu would be at a disadvantage. This lass had been competing for the past few days and had gone off to some unknown place last night. Now, she had directly rushed over to continue participating in the Mystic Master competition. Only the heavens knew how long that small body could last. If it weren't for the fact that they were the organizers of the Qingjiao competition, he would have definitely caused a ruckus. Fu Yunshan was the most guilty. But since it had already come to this point, it would be wrong to retreat. He coughed and said, "This matter is indeed Yiming's fault. But now that things have come to this, I'm afraid we really can't continue. Why don't we let the children rest for a while, and we'll come up with a new profound formation test?" Sun Zhongyan and Cheng Han fell silent. Now that things had turned out this way, this was probably the only suitable compromise. Sun Zhongyan hesitated. "Since that's the case, let's do as Brother Yunshan says." Actually, he had some selfish motives in his heart. He was worried that Chu Luiwei wouldn't be able to withstand the continuous rotation. If he could take advantage of this opportunity to rest, it might not be a bad idea. Xing Yiming lowered his head and slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. However, a sense of joy and pride emerged in his heart. If he were to start over, he might not necessarily lose to those 2. "Hold on." Chu Luiwei, who had been standing at the side without saying anything, suddenly spoke. She stared at Sun Zhongyan and said word by word, "Elder Sun, I request for the competition to continue." Everyone looked at her in unison, their gazes strange. The competition had already become like this. How could it continue? Even Sun Zhongyan was in a difficult position. He tried to persuade Lu Yu, "I understand how you feel, but the chessboard is already destroyed. There's no way to continue the competition." "My chessboard isn't destroyed yet." Chu Luiwei calmly said the sentence, but it immediately stirred up a storm in everyone's hearts. "What? Are you serious?" Sun Zhongyan exclaimed in shock. Xing Yiming also suddenly raised his head and looked at Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei opened the chessboard in her arms. The chess pieces on it didn't move at all. Even the ripples produced by the half-broken Xian formation were the same as before. Her chessboard was indeed in perfect condition. Sun Zhongyan was surprised and delighted. He never expected that Chu Luiwei could actually protect her chessboard in that situation just now. "Since your chessboard isn't damaged, there's naturally no reason to stop the competition. It's just that the others..." Xing Yiming did not say anything, but Su Bai was really wronged. When the city gate caught fire, the fish in the moat would suffer. It did not seem good to let Chu Luiwei continue the competition alone. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly and asked, "Elder Sun, you can repair this chessboard, right?" Sun Zhongyan was taken aback. "Of course. What do you mean?" "Please help Su Bai with his chessboard. When it's repaired, I'll continue the competition with him at the same time." Sun Zhongyan's eyes lit up. Why didn't he think of that? "Su Bai, do you remember how far you've gone just now?" Su Bai nodded. "That's good. It should take half a quarter of an hour to repair it. This way, the competition would not be delayed, and it would be fair enough for everyone." With that said, he raised his hand, and Su Bai's chessboard flew toward him. A stream of light flickered on his fingertips, and the chaotic lines on the chessboard quickly became clear. Su Bai watched from the side and carefully explained where he had cracked the chessboard previously. Sun Zhongyan's movements were extremely fast, and the entire chessboard was restored at a speed visible to the naked eye. After checking it, he returned the chessboard to Su Bai. "Take a look and see if it's done properly." Su Bai took it with both hands, carefully checked it, and bowed to Sun Zhongyan with a serious expression. Thank you, Elder Sunday. After that, he looked at Chu Luiwei and nodded. Thank you. You're welcome. It's just a fair competition. I don't want people to say that I won unfairly. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly and found a new seat to sit down. Su Bai did not say anything more. However, his impression of Chu Luiwei had greatly changed. Xing Yiming was left in place. He was stunned for a while. Seeing that the two were about to start, he suddenly jumped up in panic. Wait a minute. My chessboard hasn't recovered yet. Even if they wanted to continue the competition, they had to wait for him to pack up, right? How could it be so sudden? Chu Luiwei rested her chin on one hand and gave him a lazy look. She smiled faintly. If I remember correctly, your Xian array collapsed just now because you cracked it wrongly, right? According to the rules, this seems to be considered elimination? Although she did not continue, everyone could hear the meaning behind her words. As a person who had already been eliminated, how could he still have the nerve to continue standing here? Xing Yiming's words were suddenly stuck in his throat, and his face was full of excitement. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 249. He wanted to retort, but he realized that Chu Luiwei was right. Everything that had happened just now was clearly seen by the people around him. He was indeed eliminated because of his own mistake. Chu Luiwei had pointed it out so directly. No matter how thick-skinned he was, he could not continue standing on the stage. Xing Yiming's head was spinning. For so many years, he had always been a genius that everyone envied. When had he ever been defeated so easily and left the arena in such a humiliating manner? The strong psychological disparity almost made him unable to stand steadily. Shi Wanwan, who had been watching nervously from below, sensed that something was wrong with him and hurriedly rushed over. Yiming, you're injured. Why don't you rest for a while? Fu Yunshan knew that the situation could not be salvaged, so he could only shake his head and sigh. With Shi Wanwan giving him a way out, Xing Yiming finally regained his senses and reluctantly walked down. When he passed by Chu Luiwei, he could not help but turn his head to take a look. The girl's posture was languid as she stared at the chessboard with a calm expression. It was very different from his previous nervous and embarrassed appearance. He felt even more uncomfortable as he hurriedly retracted his gaze and left with his head lowered. Chu Luiwei gently placed a piece down and did not even look at him. Xing Yiming wanted to fish in troubled waters, and his method was quite subtle. Unfortunately, she did not want to waste her time on such a person. As for that Shi Wanwan, they were just jackals of the same tribe. After Xing Yiming came down, the crowd only whispered for a while before focusing their attention on the two people on the stage. The competition was about to end, and no one knew who would be the first to solve it. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd. At first, Chu Luiwei did not pay much attention to the commotion, but gradually, the commotion became louder and louder, and something seemed to be wrong. She finally retracted her gaze from the Xian formation and looked up. When she looked up, she saw a familiar figure from afar. That person was dressed in white and had a black cloak draped over him. He only needed to stand there, and it seemed like he could automatically attract everyone's attention. He was a man of great talent and status. Such a description did not seem to reflect even a fraction of what he was. Many girls in the plaza looked at him with blushing cheeks, excited and nervous. On the other hand, most of the men were ashamed of themselves. Moreover, because the difference was too great, it was hard for them to even have the thought of comparing themselves. Such an immortal-like figure was truly incomparable to an ordinary person. The commotion was caused by the arrival of this man. On the field, Chu Luiwei could still clearly hear the excited whispers of many people. Who is that? Who is that? There's actually such a gentle young man in country Yao Chen's capital. There's a bandit gentleman who's like to compare notes with each other. I can't believe there's really such a person. That seems to be the 7th prince of country Yao Chen, who is also the frail Prince Li. I heard that he had been recuperating at Mingyue Tianshan and only returned to the imperial capital recently. So it's him. I thought it would be a sickly and frail person, but I didn't expect. Although it's rumored that he's always been sick, this kind of charm is enough to make countless girls go crazy, right? Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows slightly. A monster was indeed a monster. He could easily cause such a commotion no matter where he went. However, the two of them had just parted ways in the forest outside the imperial capital. Why was he here instead of attending to his own matters? Yan Qing, who was following behind Rong Xiu, saw the commotion and blushed with shame. His master was really too much. He knew what kind of commotion his appearance would cause, yet he still made such a big fuss. Forget it. Actually, their trip this time was already considered low-key. Prince Li only brought one guard with him, so it couldn't be considered flamboyant. What was flamboyant was his master's face. When his master returned to the residence in the afternoon, there were still messy bloodstains on his body, which gave him and Umo a shock. However, his master's mood seemed to have never been better. Not only was he too lazy to pretend to be sick in the residence, but he even went out. Initially, he had some doubts, but when he saw Chu Luiwei on the field, he immediately understood. Master was clearly here for someone. However, he was even more puzzled. According to what Jianghu said, Master came back with Ms. Chu in the afternoon. Why did he come to see her again after such a short time? Yan Qing naturally didn't understand. In this world, missing someone wasn't the only illness. There was also a type called possessiveness. How could Rong Xiu stay quietly after he finally brought her back? He glanced at the girl on the stage and immediately walked forward. There seemed to be an invisible aura around him. Wherever he went, the crowd automatically retreated and made a path for him. Situ Xingqian froze the moment Rong Xiu appeared. The person that she had been thinking about day and night appeared in front of her like this. It was really unexpected. As she was too surprised and overjoyed, even the eldest princess of Xingluo was at a loss. In actual fact, they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Compared to before, that face had lost some of his youthfulness and became even more noble and cold. Her heart beat wildly, and her cheeks seemed to be burning red. She nervously checked her surroundings and secretly regretted it. If I knew that he would come today, I wouldn't have dressed casually and left the house. However, these were all small matters that were quickly washed away by the joy of seeing him again. She took a deep breath and finally called out softly when Rong Xiu walked closer. "Senior Rong Xiu." Rong Xiu paused in his footsteps and looked sideways. Digression. What a fraudulent internet. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 250. Rong Xiu stopped in his tracks and looked over. When he saw Situ Xingqian, a tinge of confusion surfaced in his clear eyes. "You are..." It was as if Situ Xingqian's head had been drenched in cold water. Her originally excited heart instantly turned cold. However, she still forcefully maintained the smile on her face. "Senior Rong Xiu, I'm Xingqian." Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes as if he was trying to recall who the girl in front of him was. Yan Qing, who was behind him, reminded him softly, Your Highness, Your Highness. She's Elder Zhong Ye's niece." Upon hearing this, Rong Xiu looked enlightened. "So it's eldest Princess Situ." Situ Xingqian looked at his reaction. It seemed like he really didn't remember her, and her heart turned cold. His distant and unfamiliar tone made her feel even more tormented. Ever since she knew that the Qing Jiao competition was held in country Yao Chen's imperial city, she had been imagining the scene of the two of them meeting. She had imagined this scene countless times, but she never expected it to be like this. He actually didn't recognize her at all. She took a deep breath and suppressed the disappointment in her heart. Actually, they had been separated for more than 2 years, and she looked different from before. It was normal that he didn't recognize her at first glance. After comforting herself like this in her heart, her expression gradually returned to normal. "It's been a long time since we last met. Senior Rong Xiu looks even more charming than before." Rong Xiu coughed and smiled warmly. However, there was no smile in the corners of his eyes. They were still cold and distant. "Eldest Princess Situ, you flatter me. My body is weak and I'm just a medicine bottle. I really can't bear such praise." Situ Xingshan wanted to say something but stopped herself. She knew that he wasn't as weak and harmless as he looked on the surface. In the past, she had personally seen how outstanding he was. However, now was clearly not the time to talk about this. Light seemed to flash across her eyes as she softly said, "Senior Rong Xiu, you're so humble." "Senior Rong Xiu, you're being too polite by calling me that. Since we are from the same sect, Senior Martial Brother Rong Xiu can directly call me." "Eldest Princess Situ, you're wrong." Rong Xiu calmly interrupted her with a smile on his lips, but his attitude was even colder. "You're Elder Zhong Ye's niece, but I'm Elder Zhu Ying's disciple." Mingyue Tianshan had a total of 8 elders. They each occupied a mountain and were different from each other. Moreover, the 2 elders had been diligently cultivating in seclusion in recent years and did not have much contact with each other. It really could not be considered that they were from the same sect. "Eldest Princess Situ, please take back the title of Senior Brother." Hearing this, the people who were originally at a loss finally understood. "I'll just wait." After saying that, he found a seat and sat down to wait quietly. Yan Qing followed and stood behind him. She did not smile and looked like an iceberg. This made many young ladies, who were interested in the weak and gentle Prince Li, calm down and wary. Prince Li seemed to have a good temper, but this cold-faced guard was not to be trifled with. Rong Xiu ignored all the gazes and quietly looked at the arena, as if he was really patiently waiting for the competition to end. This situation caused many people to start discussing secretly. How does Prince Li and Chu Liyue know each other? What does he need her help with? Who knows? Prince Li has a noble status. How can we find out about him? Could it be Prince Li and Chu Liyue? I heard that Prince Li helped her out during the Crown Prince's birthday banquet. How is that possible? That must be because His Highness Prince Li is kind-hearted. How can Chu Liyue gain Prince Li's favor? She's no longer the daughter of a noble family. But her father, Chu Ning, is already the commander of the Imperial Guards. Furthermore, she's so talented. After this Qing Jiao competition, Chu Liyue will become very popular. I don't think it's possible. Situ Xingshan naturally saw this scene as well. Her mood, which had finally recovered, was instantly affected again. She tightly gripped her sleeves and spent a lot of effort to resist the urge to go forward and ask. Others may not know, but I know. The crystal barrier that Chu Liyue used previously is Rong Xiu's. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 251. That was Rong Xiu's personal item. She had stayed at Mingyue Tianshan for so long. Even though she had only seen him use it twice, she still had a deep impression of it. Hence, she could even remember the engravings on it clearly. She had secretly asked around before and knew that Rong Xiu valued the crystal barrier very much and wouldn't easily show it to others. But now, such a precious item actually appeared in Chu Liyue's hands. Previously she had other suspicions, but now that Rong Xiu had personally appeared, she could no longer continue lying to herself. She could only admit that Rong Xiu must have taken the initiative to give it to Chu Liyue. In other words, Rong Xiu willingly gave the crystal barrier to Chu Liyue. He looked as gentle as jade, but he was actually cold and arrogant. When had he ever taken a liking to anyone, let alone give such a precious item away? And to a girl? Situ Xingshan didn't dare to think about what it meant. Once she thought about it, her heart felt like it was being squeezed, and she felt terrible. Cheng Han had long realized that Situ Xingshan was a little off ever since Rong Xiu appeared. "Xingshan, you've been so unsettled these past 2 days. Is it because—" Situ Xingshan was shocked and immediately shook her head. "It's not because of him. Master, please don't misunderstand. I haven't said why." Cheng Han had seen all kinds of situations, so he naturally easily guessed his disciple's thoughts. Situ Xingshan was stumped. She knew that there was no point in denying it, so she pursed her lips and didn't say anything else. However, Cheng Han knitted his brows. "Xingshan, you're top-notch in all aspects. What's so good about that Rong Xiu? Even though he's Prince Li from country Yaochen, He looks so weak that he can't even stand a gust of wind, let alone cultivate. Such a person is at most an idle prince. How can he be worthy of Xingqian? So many young talents like her, but she didn't care about them. I didn't expect her to like such a person. Look at Rong Xiu's attitude just now. Since when did he put the stars in his eyes? Situ Xingqian shook her head and lowered her voice in a pleading tone. Master, don't say any more. Cheng Han's heart ached when he saw her aggrieved and sad look. All right, Master won't say any more. You know what you're doing. They were here for the first place of the Qingjiao competition and nothing else. Situ Xingqian nodded reluctantly and wanted to keep her thoughts to herself. But after all, she was the person he had been thinking about for so long. Now that he finally saw her, how could he really ignore her completely? Almost instinctively, she turned her gaze to Rong Xiu. He sat there quietly, and there seemed to be a subtle aura around him that separated him from the others. That was a sense of nobility that came from his bones. He clearly looked gentle and harmless, but inexplicably made people feel reverence. Lazy, calm, and collected. Sometimes, even someone as high and mighty as her would feel ashamed of her inferiority in front of him. Some people, as long as they wanted to, seemed to be born above everything. Quite a number of people were secretly sizing up Rong Xiu. However, he did not seem to notice it, or perhaps he did not even care. His pair of deep and clear eyes only looked at the arena. Situ Xingqian followed his gaze and felt sour in her heart. He's indeed looking at Chu Luiyue. Also, when he looked at me, his eyes were filled with clear gentleness. Even though it was just a flash, I still saw it. She secretly gritted her teeth, but the waves in her heart could not be calmed down for a long time. Seeing Rong Xiu appear here, Chu Luiyue found it strange at first, but after hearing what he said to elder son, she guessed it. She raised her brows slightly and decisively retracted her gaze, focusing on the chessboard again. Now, it's better to solve the last Xian formation first. As she thought about it, she placed another piece. Su Bai, who was at the side, could not help but glance at her, and a complicated expression flashed across his eyes. He had already guessed that Chu Luiyue was extremely talented as a Xian master, but he did not expect it to be to this extent. He watched as Chu Luiyue continued to solve the Xian formation smoothly and then looked at the chessboard in front of him, which had not moved for a long time. He had already guessed the final result in his heart. In reality, from the moment Chu Luiyue preserved his chessboard perfectly, he already knew that he might not be Chu Luiyue's opponent. He pinched his brows and laughed bitterly. The piece in his hand did not land for a long time. Time seemed to be exceptionally unbearable, but it also seemed to pass very quickly. Su Bai felt that he had only been in a daze for a while. When he looked up again, he was shocked to realize that there was only a little bit of time left. Seeing that Su Bai was not going to make it, Cheng Han spoke first. If neither of them can solve the last Xian formation until the end of the competition, they can only be considered to be tied for second place. Brother Zhongyan, am I right? Sun Zhongyan hesitated for a moment. He could clearly see that Chu Luiyue was now ahead of Su Bai, but he was still a little short of solving the Xian formation. According to the rules, if one could not solve all the levels within the specified time, then even if they had the best results, they could only be considered second place and not first place. If the two of them were tied for second place, then it would be a bit of a loss for Chu Luiyue. After thinking for a moment, he nodded in agreement. Brother Cheng Han is right. Unfortunately, Chu Luiyue had come a little too late. If she had come an hour earlier, or even an hour earlier, she would definitely be able to solve the last level of the Xian formation. It's pretty good that the two of them are tied for second place. At least they did not lose. If Chu Luiyue could get this ranking, it would be a pleasant surprise. Su Bai looked up at the clock. There was not much time left, and only a small part of the chessboard in front of him had been solved. He smiled helplessly and directly put down the chess piece in his hand. Chu Luiyue, who was at the side, noticed the commotion and turned to look at him with raised brows. Su Bai actually chose to give up at this time. It seems that you and I are really going to be in the same place. Su Bai laughed self-deprecatingly. He thought that he would definitely get first place. Unfortunately, A perverted freshman like Chu Luiyue had appeared. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up slightly. Sorry, I don't like to be second place. Su Bai was stunned for a moment, and then he saw Chu Luiyue put down a chess piece. Almost at the same time, another chess piece appeared in her other hand. Immediately after, another chess piece fell. She was actually holding a chess piece with both hands. One had to know that this was not a real chess game, but a Xian formation. Every chess piece contained a different origin power. Once there was a mistake, the entire Xian formation would be affected and even collapse directly. Chu Luiyue was actually so bold. She thought that one hand was not enough, so she used two at the same time. Was she not afraid that if she was not careful and made a mistake, her efforts would be in vain? Chu Luiyue did not seem to care about everything around her at all. Her hands quickly overlapped, and the sound of chess pieces falling down almost became a string. Finally, the referee raised his voice. Time's up, bang. The last Xian formation broke with a sound. On the stone platform in front of Chu Luiyue, the fifth star suddenly lit up and shone brightly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 252. Chu Luiyue actually managed to solve the last round at the last moment. She was the only person who managed to pass the Xian Master competition. Everyone had different reactions when they saw the 5 shining stars. Some were shocked, some were surprised, some were happy, and some were annoyed. However, they were all in disbelief at Chu Luiyue's actions. One had to know that she had only used 2 hours to solve 5 Xian arrays from the time she rushed to the competition to the end. Even those who had doubts about her before had to admit that Chu Luiyue's talent as a Xian master was indeed rare. Chu Luiyue stood up and smiled politely at Su Bai. Thank you for letting me win. Su Bai smiled bitterly. How did he let her win? I admit defeat. I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Su Bai was calm. He took a deep breath and cupped his hands. In fact, he had already lost the moment Chu Luiyue protected the chessboard. Chu Luiyue was stronger than he had imagined. Everyone looked at this scene in a daze. Sun Zhongyan was the first to react, and his heart thumped excitedly. I hereby announce that the champion of this year's Qingjiao competition is Chu Luiyue from Tianlu Academy. Everyone had heard similar words the day before. However, no one had expected that Chu Luiyue would win first place in the Xian Master competition after taking first place in the warrior competition. Damn pervert, you really don't leave anyone else a way out. Xiyang let out a long howl. He had a premonition that the gap between him and Chu Luiyue would only widen in the future. Not only him, but the others also felt the same way. This kind of person was born to make others envious, jealous, and hate, right? Mu Hongyu and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief and cheered excitedly. Up until now, Tianlu Academy had won first place in both rounds of the Qingjiao competition. Most importantly, it was Chu Luiyue who won. This time, she had completely outshone everyone in the Qingjiao competition. On the other hand, the atmosphere in the other 2 great academies was somewhat cold. When Xing Yiming heard Sun Zhongyan's announcement, he finally couldn't take it anymore. His qi and blood surged, and his eyes rolled back as he fainted. Shi Wanwan quickly supported him. Yiming. Yiming. How are you? Fu Yunshan glanced at him. He was a little frustrated and disappointed. He just fainted because he couldn't take the blow. Just bring him back and let him rest. It was one thing to lose in public, but why did it have to come to this? It was too embarrassing. Xing Yiming's character really needed to be changed. Oh, good. This student will bring him back now. Shi Wanwan was worried about Xing Yiming, so she didn't notice Fu Yunshan's dissatisfaction. She waved at the people next to her, asking them to help take Xing Yiming away. However, just as he turned around, he heard a somewhat familiar voice. Please wait. Shi Wanwan's heart skipped a beat. She stopped and looked back. Chu Luiyue crossed his arms and looked at him with a smile. But that smile made Shi Wanwan feel even more uneasy. She guiltily avoided Chu Luiyue's gaze and asked uncertainly, Are you calling me? Are you calling me? Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. Of course. There's something here that I need you to explain. Shi Wanwan instantly panicked. Was Chu Luiwei going to expose that matter in public? She did it secretly and no one noticed at all. Also, that thing couldn't leave any evidence. Even a level 5 Xian master like Sun Zhongyan definitely wouldn't be able to find anything strange. Even Si Ting had no choice but to admit defeat. Shi Wanwan calmed down a little and forced a smile. What is it? If it's not urgent, why don't we talk about it later? Yiming is unconscious now. We have to send him back as soon as possible. It's nothing serious. He'll be fine soon. As Chu Luiwei spoke, he suddenly looked at Si Ting. Si Ting, you were having a good match just now. Why did the chessboard suddenly collapse? Si Ting was stunned. He didn't expect Chu Luiwei to be talking about this. He pursed his lips. If he didn't have any evidence, it would be useless to accuse her directly. Instead, he would drag Chu Luiwei down with him. Hearing Chu Luiwei call Si Ting's name, Rong Xiu's thin lips curved into a faint smile. This little thing actually wanted to stand up for someone else. Yan Qing shivered inexplicably and felt his master's aura turn cold. He immediately lowered his head and tried his best to minimize his presence. However, Chu Luiwei had already picked up the chessboard that Si Ting had used during the match. I look at this thing. It doesn't seem right. A thought suddenly flashed across Si Ting's mind. Could Chu Luiwei provide evidence? He stepped forward and said in a low voice, "My chessboard collapsed because Shi Wanwan tampered with it." Si Ting, you can't spout nonsense. Shi Wanwan was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Her voice rose an octave. So many people are watching. How could I possibly do such a thing? That's right. So many people are watching, but you still dared to do it in public. Your mental fortitude is extraordinary. Even I am impressed. Chu Luiwei praised her sincerely. It seemed that if she wasn't holding the chessboard in her hand, she would have applauded Shi Wanwan. Shi Wanwan was so angry that her face turned red. Seeing how confident Chu Luiwei was, her originally calm heart started to sway again. Could it be that Chu Luiwei really had a way? "Luyu, what did you find?" Sun Zhongyan asked with a frown. He also knew that Si Ting had been eliminated for no reason, so he did suspect Shi Wanwan. However, he didn't find any clues, so he didn't pursue the matter. He planned to ask Si Ting in detail after the match. He didn't expect Chu Luiwei to beat him to it. Nothing much. I just found that there seems to be something extra on the chessboard. As Chu Luiwei spoke, she knocked on the chessboard with one hand. Shi Wanwan stared at it intently. There was nothing on the smooth and clean chessboard. Chu Luiwei was obviously tricking her. She sneered, feeling a little more confident. "Chu Luiwei, you said that there is something extra on the chessboard. I wonder what it is exactly? Why is there nothing on the chessboard?" Everyone else was confused as well. They didn't know what Chu Luiwei was referring to. Chu Luiwei smiled meaningfully. "You will find out soon." With that, she waved her finger, and a ray of silver light suddenly appeared. Then, her finger gently brushed across the chessboard. A faint mark was left on the chessboard. She moved her finger gently, as if she was drawing something. On the originally plain chessboard, a pattern gradually lit up. The light overlapped, and it was clear and bright. Sun Zhongyan widened his eyes slightly. That was actually the last Xian formation on the chessboard. Chu Luiwei actually restored that Xian formation again. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 253. Sun Zhongyan was not the only one. All the Xian masters present were stunned. They all knew how complicated the last Xian formation on the chessboard was. It would be difficult for them to trace it bit by bit, let alone redraw it. Furthermore, Chu Luiwei was tracing it bit by bit from the end to the front. This was many times more difficult than memorizing a book backward. However, Chu Luiwei seemed to remember it clearly. Every stroke was smooth and natural. Even if she deciphered the Xian formation, she shouldn't be able to remember it completely. Even the people from Tianlu Academy could not help but whisper among themselves. Has she really seen that Xian formation before? It seemed like this was the only explanation for how she could decipher the Xian formation so quickly and repair it completely. Dong Fangqing coughed. Don't you guys know that this girl has a photographic memory? During the meditation class, although Chu Luiyue kept a low profile, he had observed her a few times and realized that any Xian formation did not seem to be a problem for Chu Luiyue. As long as she wanted to, not only could she decipher it quickly, but she could also trace out the Xian formation's patterns completely. Whether she could use a high-grade Xian formation was another matter. After all, she could not release such a powerful and abundant energy at her current cultivation level. However, she knew exactly how to trace out each strand of energy. Dong Fangqing clearly remembered that once, Chu Luiyue seemed to be bored in class, so she sat in her seat and played with the chessboard repeatedly. He unintentionally glanced at it and noticed that she was tracing out the Xian formation. From then on, he knew that this girl was not simple. This was also why he hoped that Chu Luiyue would participate in this Xian master competition. Really? Even Sun Zhongyan was in disbelief. He did not interact much with Chu Luiyue normally. Other than the midterm assessment, he had not seen Chu Luiyue's performance on Xian formations. Looking at it now, it really was true. But what is she trying to do? They soon found out why Chu Luiyue was doing this. After Chu Luiyue redrew the profound formation stroke by stroke, he suddenly stopped. If I'm not wrong, this is where you came to just now, right? She showed the chessboard to Si Ting. Si Ting was extremely surprised as he nodded. Not bad. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up as she looked at Shi Wanwan. When Shi Wanwan saw the chessboard restored by Chu Luiyue, her back was already drenched in cold sweat. Chu Luiyue gently waved her finger, and an indistinct line was lifted from the chessboard by her. Shi Wanwan, do you know what this is? The object in Chu Luiyue's hand was only about an inch long. Although it was transparent, it reflected some light under the sunlight, so everyone could vaguely recognize it. That is, Sun Zhongyan's expression changed. Silver Soul Hook. When they heard the 3 words Silver Soul Hook, many people revealed shocked expressions. It was rumored that this object was made from the rare sky snow silk. It was soft and transparent, but it was extremely tough. It was even sharper than a sword. However, this object had a huge flaw. It could only be used once. Once it was used, this Silver Soul Hook would become extremely weak and completely useless. However, from a certain perspective, this was also one of its advantages. At least, it was very suitable as a hidden weapon. It was very destructive, and it would not leave any clues. As long as one waited for a while, it would completely melt. There would be no trace of it. However, the sky snow silk was extremely precious. Ordinary people had not even seen it before, let alone used it. These chessboards were all checked before they were brought to the competition. They would definitely not be mixed with this kind of thing. Sun Zhongyan immediately realized something and looked at Shi Wanwan sternly. Shi Wanwan, how do you explain this? Shi Wanwan was completely stunned when Chu Luiyue lifted the Silver Soul Hook. Her body was cold, and her mind was buzzing. She almost could not hear what Sun Zhongyan was saying. Her face was abnormally pale, and she subconsciously denied it. I don't know. That's not mine. Chu Luiyue gently moved the Silver Soul Hook in his hand and said lazily, It's fine if you don't admit it. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. Those who have touched the Silver Soul Hook will have a faint silver color on their hands. Do you dare to show me your hands? Shi Wanwan trembled, and her hands subconsciously curled up in her sleeves. How did she know? How did she know? I didn't. Shi Wanwan was still refuting, but everyone could tell that something was wrong with her guilty look. Fu Yunshan's expression was also ugly. A clean conscience is not afraid of a crooked shadow. Wanwan, you just need to show your hands, and you can prove your innocence. Shi Wanwan was extremely anxious. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to show her hands. Dean, please believe me. I really didn't do it. Fu Yunshan saw her reaction and understood everything. Shi Wanwan must have secretly used the Silver Soul Hook. When deciphering a Xian formation on the chessboard, every force is exquisite. One wrong move will cause the entire game to be lost. If a silver soul hook were to drop now, it would be unimaginable. Chu Luiyue sighed and shook his head. Such a small thing is worth a lot of money. It's gone just like that. What a pity, Shi Wanwan. Do you still want to deny it? Shi Wanwan couldn't say a word as she collapsed to the ground. She looked at Chu Luiyue in a daze. She couldn't understand how the silver soul hook was discovered and how Chu Luiyue found it. She only knew that her future was completely over now that this matter was exposed. Fu Yunshan was also infuriated and shouted angrily. He shouted, "Why did you do that? You've really disgraced Nanfeng Academy." To think that he had spoken up for Shi Wanwan earlier. Now it was like a loud slap to his face. Shi Wanwan's tears fell like pearls from a broken necklace. "It's all my fault. Please punish me, Dean. But please don't implicate others." Sun Zhongyan said in a low voice. "Brother Yunshan, you have to give an explanation for this matter, right?" Fu Yunshan had never been so humiliated before. He just wanted to kill Shi Wanwan with one slap. He took a deep breath and said, "Shi Wanwan was unscrupulous. Her methods are despicable. From today onwards, she will be expelled from Nanfeng Academy. She will never be hired again." Shi Wanwan seemed to have been struck by lightning. Under the strong impact, she also fainted. Fu Yunshan didn't even want to look at her. He suppressed the anger in his heart and cupped his hands at Sun Zhongyan and Cheng Han. "I didn't take care of this matter properly. I'm sorry." Since Fu Yunshan had already made his stance clear, the others naturally couldn't say anything else. Chu Luiyue pressed her fingers lightly, and the useless silver soul hook instantly turned into powder. She put down the chessboard and walked off the stage. Si Ting was about to step forward and thank her personally when a low laugh came from the side. "Miss Luyu, now that you've helped everyone else, can you do me a favor now?" Digression, it's about 9:30 p.m. Isn't it too late to take a big step today? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 254. Si Ting looked over. It was the seventh prince, Rong Xiu. Prince Li, the Honorable Prince Li. He was also someone she liked. He stopped in his tracks and did not walk forward. Even he had to admit that Prince Li, who had not been in the capital city for a long time, was indeed very handsome. Si Yang could not help but nudge Si Ting with his elbow and mumbled, "He's just a medicine man. He's just a medicine jar. I really don't know what that damn pervert likes about his face. What's the use of a man being so good-looking?" When he first heard Chu Luiyue say that she liked Prince Li, he was very indignant. His elder brother was much better than him in every way, except for his status. Moreover, his elder brother was going to be the head of the Si family in the future. Seriously speaking, his status was not that low. He really did not know what Chu Luiyue was thinking. Si Ting glanced at him with an indifferent expression. Si Yang knew that he had said something wrong and quickly shut his mouth. However, he did not know that Si Ting was thinking the exact opposite of him. His Highness Prince Li was known for his weak body and lack of real power. He didn't even have much talent in cultivation. Even so, she still liked him. No matter how good other people were, what could she do if she did not like them? Moreover, he felt that this prince was different from what the rumors said. He sensed a faint threat from Rong Xiu. It was definitely not the aura of someone who was bedridden all year round. Chu Luiyue did not notice the tension between the two of them and walked over to Rong Xiu. "Why are you here? What can I do for you?" Rong Xiu smiled faintly. "Just a small favor. However, I have to trouble Miss Luyu to come with me." Chu Luiyue thought to herself. They had only been separated for less than 4 hours. What was so urgent that he had to come to her for help? He was obviously doing it on purpose. However, when she saw Rong Xiu's gentle gaze, her heart softened and she felt a faint bittersweet feeling. The corners of her mouth curled up. "Since your Highness has spoken, I naturally have no reason not to help." Rong Xiu's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone was still around, he would have already stepped forward and carried her away. Senhu scratched his head and looked at the two people who were about to leave. "Lu Yu, are you leaving already?" Aren't you going to celebrate with us? Yesterday, when Chu Luiwei won first place in the warrior competition, they wanted to celebrate for her. However, after considering that she still had a Xian Master competition today, they temporarily delayed it. Today, she won first place in the Xian Master competition again. No matter what, she had to drink properly. Didn't you say last time that we were going to Phoenix Restaurant? Ouch. Sen Hu held the back of his head and looked at Mu Hongyu pitifully. Why did she hit him? Mu Hongyu flashed him a toothy smile. His Highness needs Lu Yu's help. How can we delay? As for the celebration, it's the same if we wait for Lu Yu to come back. Sen Hu didn't understand, but when he saw the faint murderous intent in Mu Hongyu's eyes, his desire to live was still very strong. Yes, go ahead. We will wait for you. Mu Hongyu looked at Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu with bright, almond-shaped eyes. She felt that she seemed to have guessed where Lu Yu went yesterday. Chu Luiwei trembled under her gaze. Then I'll be right back. With that, she left with Rong Xiu. Yan Qing followed closely behind. I heard that the thing that caught my eye at Zhenbao Pavilion last time has something to do with Miss Lu Yu. Rong Xiu said casually. Realization dawned on those who vaguely heard it. So it had something to do with Zhenbao Pavilion. No wonder. Who in the Imperial City didn't know that Chu Luiwei and Zhenbao Pavilion had a special relationship? Even Crown Prince Rong Jin and 4th Princess Rong Zhen didn't get any benefits from Zhenbao Pavilion. Prince Li was so cautious and directly asked Chu Luiwei for help. It seemed quite wise. Sidu Xingqian clenched her teeth so hard that they almost broke. She spent a lot of effort to control her emotions. Others didn't think much of it, but in her eyes, the duo's every word and action was extremely glaring. It's probably just an excuse. She never knew that the cold and arrogant Rong Xiu would look at a girl with such a gaze. Gentle, loving, and doting. If this didn't prove that there was something between the two of them, Sidu Xingqian felt her nose sting. She thought that even if Rong Xiu didn't have any romantic feelings for her, he would at least treat her as someone from the same sect. After all, they had stayed at Mingyue Tianshan for so long. However, everything that happened today woke her up from her beautiful dream. Doesn't even remember who I am. His gaze was so cold and indifferent that it was as if he was looking at a stranger. Mentor, I'm not feeling well. I'll go back first, said Sidu Xingqian softly. Cheng Han sighed. That's good too. The Celestial Physician competition is tomorrow. Go back and rest well and prepare yourself. Sidu Xingqian nodded in response and quickly turned around to leave. Chu Luiwei followed Rong Xiu out and saw a familiar horse carriage. Rong Xiu came out in a horse carriage? Come to think of it, he's still that weak Prince Li in the eyes of the Imperial City's people. Yan Qing had already gone forward to ride the horse. Rong Xiu walked over and personally lifted the curtain. However, Chu Luiwei didn't move. His gaze slowly swept across Rong Xiu's body, especially stopping at his sleeves and the corners of his clothes. He seemed to smile. Your Highness, the pattern on your clothes is really unique. Is this the only one in the world? Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. I'm so jealous. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 255. I personally drew this pattern and hired a professional to embroider it. It's indeed unique. Chu Luiwei let out a long "oh" with a subtle expression. She had also clearly heard Rong Xiu and Sidu Xingqian's conversation and knew that there was nothing between the two of them. Sidu Xingqian had a secret crush on Rong Xiu, so the pattern on her clothes was most likely secretly made by herself. However, whenever she thought of this, she would feel uncomfortable. Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly. Let's get on the horse carriage first. We'll talk on the way. Chu Luiwei thought that since the competition had ended, the people inside should be coming out soon. If they saw this scene, it would probably cause unnecessary misunderstandings. She lightly snorted and got on the horse carriage. Rong Xiu followed closely behind and only put down the curtain when they were in the horse carriage. Yan Qing waved her long whip. Giddy up. The horse started galloping and left very quickly. In the horse carriage, Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu sat opposite each other. Your Highness has a distinguished status. What can I help you with? Chu Luiwei raised her brows and asked. Rong Xiu chuckled softly. Are you angry? Chu Luiwei didn't admit it, but she didn't deny it either. She stared at him with her clear eyes. Other than you, I've never had any feelings for any other girl, much less, I believe you. Chu Luiwei interrupted Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu was a little surprised. Chu Luiwei's expression was natural and firm. Since we're already together, I naturally believe you. Seeing the girl's confident look, a smile gradually appeared in Rong Xiu's eyes. He gently held Chu Luiwei's hand. It's great that you believe me, but since these things made you unhappy, I'll explain it to you. Chu Luiwei was stunned. Seeing Rong Xiu's serious and gentle expression, her heart suddenly felt warm. He lowered himself and explained so much just because she was unhappy? Of course, Rong Xiu liked to see Chu Luiwei jealous of him, but he liked her happy even more. Therefore, even if it was just a little bit of grievance, he would not let her suffer. He flipped his cuff over. Take a closer look. Chu Luiwei looked down and saw that there were also strange and exquisite patterns embroidered on his cuffs. Does it look like tree vines? On the outside, there were peach blossoms that looked like clouds, and on the inside, there were lifelike tree vines. Of course, the tree vines were also embroidered with golden threads, making them look even more ethereal. It's just that if you don't open it and look carefully, it's really not easy to notice. I like this pattern very much. Most of my clothes have this pattern. Anyone who has seen me a few times and paid a bit of attention will be able to draw and imitate me. However, I've only learned a little. It's just the form and spirit. Rong Xiu's tone was calm, and he was too lazy to even mention Situ Xingqian's name. There was naturally nothing to mention about a person who was not worth his attention. If it weren't for the fact that she made Chu Luiwei unhappy, he wouldn't have wanted to be so calculative with her. But now, it was different. When Chu Luiwei saw the tree vines pattern in the cuffs, the anger in her heart had already dissipated by half. Hearing Rong Xiu's explanation, she calmed down even more. This was originally not something to be angry about. After all, Situ Xingqian had her own hands and legs. No one could stop her from doing whatever she wanted. Actually, if I take a closer look, this pattern doesn't really look like it. Every stitch and thread of the cloud pattern on Rong Xiu's clothes were extremely precise. Even the faint pattern on the peach blossom petals could be vaguely seen. It was as if it was blown up by the wind and scattered into clouds. Situ Xingqian's pattern only looked a little similar, but thinking back, it didn't have any beauty. It didn't look like peach blossoms or clouds. It was a little out of place. Chu Luiwei stared at his sleeves, and her fingertips subconsciously slid across his palm. After thinking for a while, she suddenly could not help but laugh. I'm the one who's petty. Rong Xiu's palm, which was scratched by her, felt itchy. He looked up slightly, and his gaze landed on her soft and fair neck. Further up were her soft, rosy lips. I can't ask for more than this, petty. No one else can have it. When Chu Luiwei heard this, she glared at him angrily. Not only did it not deter him, but it also made him even more captivated. Rong Xiu's Adam's apple bobbed up and down, and he suddenly felt a little hot. Some things really can't be started. Once it's started, it can't be stopped. He forced himself to look away and suddenly moved back a little. Chu Luiwei found it strange when she saw him remove his cloak and put it aside. She could not help but tease him. But, isn't Prince Li weak and has a cold body all year round? Are you feeling hot now? Rong Xiu raised his brows slightly and did not say anything. His slender hands then reached for his belt. Cut. The belt's jade buckle was undone. The smile on Chu Luiwei's face froze. Rong Xiu, what is this? Rong Xiu did not seem to notice her stiffness at all. After undoing his belt and throwing it on his cloak, he slightly raised his neck to untie his collar. He was originally tall and was more than a head taller than Chu Luiwei. Now that the two of them were sitting side by side, when he raised his head, Chu Luiwei could clearly see his protruding Adam's apple and his smooth jade-like chin. As Prince Li, he was naturally wearing a brocade robe. Chu Luiwei could recognize that it was made of the best flowing light brocade. At first glance, one would only think that the plain white material was ordinary, but it was exceptionally clean and soft. But if one looked carefully, one would see a faint light on it, as bright and clear as the moonlight in the dark night. His collar was very tight, and the embroidery was exquisite. The stitches were fine, and it was fastened with beads polished from a round crescent stone. But at this moment, his fingers gently moved the clasp and it was easily undone. A straight clavicle could be faintly seen. "Your Highness Yu," Chu Liyue's face suddenly became hot. Rong Xiu slightly raised his head, but his phoenix eyes were slightly lowered. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the confusion and panic on the girl's face. His thin scarlet lips slightly curved, but he did not answer. His fingers gradually moved down. 1 button. 2 buttons. The buttons on his brocade robe were undone one by one just like that. Chu Liyue could even see the snow-white inner robe. Because most of the restraints were gone, the clothes on his upper body had become loose, as if they would be taken off at any time. He stretched out his long arm and actually took off his outer robe. Chu Liyue could even see the indistinct abdominal muscles under his inner robe when he moved. Chu Liyue was stunned. Although Rong Xiu often slept with her before, it was always at night. Moreover, the relationship between the two was ambiguous, so she did not think too much about it. But now, it was broad daylight, and his clothes were half undone. What was he doing? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 256. There were only 5 people who chose the advanced formula. Now, the first person who tried to form the pill failed, leaving only 4 people. The key was that he had used up too much energy previously. Even if there was a second set of herbs beside him, he did not have the energy to try. Hence, he had no chance at all. He would be like the people who failed and were eliminated. He would not be able to obtain the final ranking. This result was very cruel, but there was nothing he could do. He had to be prepared for this when he chose the advanced formula. Cheng Lishue's face darkened. Out of the 5 people in the competition, Nanfeng Academy had 2, Taiyan Academy had 2, and Tianlu Academy only had 1. They originally had an advantage, but now, they only had 1 person left, just like Tianlu Academy. The key was that they did not even know if they could succeed. Emotsong could not hide the delight in his eyes. Look, what did I say before? This sort of thing like refining pills, what one could not afford the most was this kind of impatient attitude for success. If you don't have a stable mind, you won't succeed in the end. Of course, the most important thing is talent and ability. Enough. It's not too late to say this after your academy's people form the pill. Cheng Lishue interrupted him in annoyance. Emotsong snorted and did not argue with him. When the results are out, we'll see who will be slapped in the face. Elder Feng Yi did not say much to the 2 of them and only smiled as he looked at the students competing in the competition. Anyway, Tianlu Academy had 2 of the 3 first places in this year's Qingjiao competition. Even if they did not win the Celestial Physician competition, it was nothing. Chu Liuyue's outstanding performance previously helped him reduce a lot of pressure. The young man did not continue trying and left the competition with a defeated look. Situ Xingchen only glanced at him from the corner of her eye before retracting her gaze. Now, she only had 3 opponents left. Brother Zhongyan, more than half of the time has passed. It won't be long before the last round of the competition ends. It seems like Elder Yi won't be coming. Cheng Han purposely asked. Sun Zhongyan knitted his brows. On the first day, he had already told Cheng Han that Elder Yi had been in closed-door training recently. Why was he still asking? Martial Uncle has always been carefree and casual. All these years, he has only been interested in alchemy. Everyone should know this, right? Cheng Han laughed. Brother Zhongyan, please don't misunderstand. I just feel that it's a pity. Sun Zhongyan instinctively felt that he wouldn't say anything nice, so he didn't say anything. However, Cheng Han was brimming with confidence today. He had steeled his heart to hold his head high. Naturally, he would not stop here. On the one hand, I've always respected Elder Yi, but I've only seen him a few times over the years, which is a pity. On the other hand, Elder Ye's strength is formidable and his skill in alchemy is unparalleled. But up until now, there has been no one to inherit his mantle. Isn't it an extreme pity? He narrowed his eyes as if he was trying to recall something. 10 years ago, I made an agreement with Elder Yi that if I had a disciple in the future, I would definitely let them spar with each other. But now, Sun Zhongyan sneered. Promise? It was just a joke. 10 years ago, Cheng Han became a level 5 celestial physician. He thought that he was already strong enough, so he specially came to Tianlu Academy to challenge Elder Yi. At that time, Elder Yi had already been famous for a long time. Not to mention country Yaochen, even the surrounding empires couldn't compare to him. Cheng Han came full of confidence, but in the end he suffered a crushing defeat and left dejectedly. The so-called agreement regarding the spar between his disciples was just an excuse for himself back then. Now, he still has the cheek to mention it? Cheng Han was very pleased. Yi Zhiding was indeed formidable as a celestial physician. Even now, he knew that he was most likely not Yi Zhiding's match. However, Yi Zhiding had never accepted a disciple. Today, in country Yaochen's imperial capital, as long as Star Union won the Qingjiao competition and trampled on those people, from a certain perspective, he would be able to win back some ground. Who said that Uncle Master doesn't have a disciple? Sun Zhongyan interrupted Cheng Han's words with a carefree smile. Cheng Han was stunned. Elder Yi accepted a disciple? Why haven't I heard of this before? Could it be one of the contestants in the competition? As he spoke, he quickly scanned the competition venue. He remembered that the only contestant from Tianlu Academy who chose to go up was another celestial physician's disciple. As for the others, their standards were even worse. Up until now, he couldn't tell which one of them was particularly outstanding. When did Yi Zhiding's judgment become so bad? Sun Zhongyan remained calm. Uncle Master's disciple didn't compete today. Cheng Han found it even stranger and laughed strangely. Why is that so? Could it be that Elder Ye's disciple doesn't care about the Qingjiao competition? Or is he not even qualified to compete? To be able to sign up for the Celestial Physician competition, one had to be at least a second-grade Celestial Physician. Sun Zhongyan was so angry that he laughed. Does this Cheng Han really think that he's great just because he accepted Situ Xingqian? If he knew that Uncle Master's disciple was Chu Luiwei, who won the previous 2 competitions, I really wonder what kind of expression he would have. Brother Cheng Han, you don't have to worry about this. Cheng Han laughed, but he felt even more smug inside. If he was really talented, why didn't he compete? It's most likely that he wasn't qualified. Chu Luiwei couldn't help but smile when he heard the two of them bicker with each other. Cheng Han was too overconfident. Situ Xingqian did have some talent as a celestial physician, but it was only SOSO. She was considered the best here, but if she went to the Tianling dynasty, she wouldn't be enough. At this moment, Situ Xingqian also started to try to form the pill. Buzz buzz. The commotion caused by her forming the pill was clearly stronger than that of the previous young man. Chu Luiwei looked up slightly. The outline of a pill gradually appeared in the fire in the cauldron in front of Situ Xingqian. There was a commotion in the crowd. Situ Xingqian stared at it closely, and her heart was in her throat. As long as I can hold on, as long as I can survive this last round. The process of forming the pill exhausted a lot of energy. In just a short while, her face turned a little pale. The fire in the cauldron seemed a little unstable, but it kept burning shakily. Suddenly, Chu Luiwei focused his gaze. A familiar and dangerous aura suddenly appeared. The next moment, she suddenly stood up and dashed toward the competition venue. She was very fast and reached the edge in the blink of an eye. Lu Yu, what are you doing? Seeing Chu Luiwei suddenly appear, everyone was shocked, but they didn't have time to stop him. Chu Luiwei flicked his wrist, and a dagger flew out. The dagger deeply stabbed into the cauldron in front of a young man. The strong impact directly flipped the cauldron over. Situ Xingqian wasn't far away. When she saw Chu Luiwei rushing over, her heart skipped a beat, and she lost control of the fire in the cauldron. Boom! She lost control, and the fire in the square cauldron started burning fiercely. The pill that had already formed the outlines suddenly shattered. Situ Xingchen was dazed for a moment and finally couldn't hold it in. Chu Luiwei, what are you doing? Chu Luiwei ignored her and quickly walked toward the young man. The thing in his hand just now, Chu Luiwei. Situ Xingchen suddenly exploded and hurriedly blocked Chu Luiwei as she sternly shouted, I'm in the midst of a competition. I'm about to form the pill, but you suddenly barged in and destroyed my pill. What exactly are you planning to do? Chu Luiwei coldly glanced at her. You better not stop me now. As for the medicinal pills that were destroyed, I'll compensate you. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 257. Earlier, Lord Chuning came to me for help and said that Miss Lu Yu was missing. I was very anxious and immediately sent people to look for her. There was no news for a long time, so I went to the forest outside the capital to try my luck. I didn't expect to meet Prince Li's confidant, Yan Qing, not long after I entered the forest. I heard that he was going to look for Prince Li, so I followed him, thinking that I might be able to ask Prince Li for help. I didn't expect to see Miss Lu Yu there as soon as I arrived. After asking around, I found out that Prince Li happened to meet Miss Lu Yu, who was unconscious in the forest, and saved her. He chuckled. After I came back, I immediately sent someone to inform Lord Chuning. Lord Chuning just arrived and was about to go to Jianghu Square together. I didn't expect Miss Lu Yu to come back so soon. Yan Ji's words were half true. Chu Luiwei did come back with Yan Qing and Yan Gu, but Rong Xiu was the one who added that he saved her. They were in a hurry, so they didn't go into detail. Yan Gu blinked his eyes. Chu Luiwei immediately understood that this was a deliberate excuse to reassure Chuning. She didn't expose him and nodded in agreement. Anyway, in Chuning's eyes, Rong Xiu had already helped her several times, so one more time wouldn't make a difference. Chuning sighed. Speaking of which, we, father and daughter, owe your highness more and more favors. Rong Xiu smiled. Lord Chuning, you're too polite. It's just a small matter. Seeing that he was so humble, Chuning felt even more grateful and admired him at the same time. Prince Li could be said to be the most gentle person among all the princes of His Majesty. Unfortunately, his health wasn't very good and he was bedridden for many years. Your Highness, are you feeling better recently? Thank you for your concern, Lord Chuning. I'm much better than before. That's good. Chuning looked at Rong Xiu's expression. It seemed that he was indeed better than before. However, I heard that even the celestial physician in country Yaochen was unable to cure his body. I wonder how he is now. He suddenly thought of something and glanced at his daughter without batting an eyelid. That's right, maybe Yu has a way. Hadn't his old injuries and her Yuan meridian been healed by herself? If he could help Prince Li recover, it would be considered as returning a favor. Thinking of this, he felt more and more that it was feasible. He planned to have a private chat with you when he had the opportunity. After all, they were father and daughter and their hearts were connected. Chu Luiwei could guess most of Chuning's thoughts with just a glance. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If Chuning knew that Rong Xiu, who was standing in front of him, was not only healthy, but was also very powerful and could be considered one of the top figures in country Yaochen, who knew how he would react? Chuning looked at Chu Luiwei worriedly. Well, what happened yesterday? Why did you leave the academy? Who exactly? Chu Luiwei coughed. Father, this matter is rather complicated, and I haven't figured it out yet. I'll tell you in detail later. However, there's something else that I didn't have time to tell you. I won first place in the Xian Master competition today. Chuning was originally on tenterhooks, but when he heard the last sentence, he was shocked. What did you say? First place in the Xian Master competition? He knew that you had signed up for both the Xian Master and Warrior competitions, but he was already overjoyed when she won first place in the Warrior competition yesterday. He didn't expect her to also. Really? Why would I lie to you? Chu Luiwei smiled until her eyes turned into crescents. Although it's a pity that you didn't see it personally today, the results didn't disappoint you, right? Chuning looked at her smiling face and found it hard to believe for a moment. First place in the warrior competition. First place in the Xian master competition. There were a total of 3 competitions in the Qingjiao competition, and she won first place twice. However, Jianghu was the first to react. He clapped his hands and said excitedly, "Miss Lu Yu is indeed amazing." His master's taste was undeniable. The madam that he had chosen was 1 in a million. After you won first place in the warrior competition yesterday, I already gave the order to book the entire Phoenix restaurant. I was just waiting for the competition to end to invite you over. I didn't expect you to enter another competition today. It seems that booking the entire restaurant for a day is far from enough. Ha! Chu Luiwei immediately shook her head. How can I accept this? I already troubled Second Master Yen a lot last time. This time, no matter what, sigh. Your status is different now. Over the years, those who have outstanding results in the Qingjiao competition will be highly sought after and have a meteoric rise. Now that Miss Lu Yu won first place in 2 competitions, she'll definitely become a popular figure. If you don't agree, you're not giving Zhenbao Pavilion face. Chu Luiwei knew that he seemed to want to build a relationship with her. However, with Zhenbao Pavilion's status, it didn't seem to be necessary. However, she didn't show it and agreed with a smile. Alright, then I'll thank Second Master Yen first. However, why don't we postpone it until the Qingjiao competition is over? Yengu laughed. Of course. The few of them chatted for a while more before Chu Ning decided to leave with Chu Luiwei. Before leaving, she didn't forget to express her gratitude to Rong Xiu again. Your Highness, you've helped me so many times. I really don't know how to thank you. If your Highness has time, why don't you come to my humble abode? Chu Ning asked tentatively. Only if Rong Xiu came would you be able to take his pulse. Rong Xiu smiled sincerely. Lord Chu Ning, I naturally have no reason to reject your kindness. When this matter is over, I'll definitely pay you a visit personally. Chu Luiwei coughed. If she went again, it might be a marriage proposal. Rong Xiu had always been a man of his words. She also curtsied and bid farewell to Rong Xiu and Yengu before leaving with Chu Ning. After the father and daughter disappeared, Rong Xiu turned around. Yengu instinctively wanted to bow, but when he remembered that there were outsiders around, he suppressed his impulse and asked with a smile. Your Highness, do you want to pick something? Rong Xiu nodded slightly. Yes, I should. Do you know what Lord Chu Ning likes? He only knew Yu Er's preferences, but he didn't know much about Chu Ning. Ah! Yengu was stunned. Rong Xiu glanced at him indifferently. Yengu almost slapped himself on the head. Stupid. Master was obviously trying to woo his father-in-law. This Lord Chu Ning used to run a weapons shop and seems to like this. There are also porcelain and other things inside. Why don't you take a look? Rong Xiu walked in. Without turning his head, he said lazily, Yen Qing, do what I told you to do immediately. Yen Qing immediately bowed and said respectfully, yes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 258. After Situ Xingchen and Cheng Han left, she rejected a few people who wanted to accompany her and left alone. She walked on the streets aimlessly, not knowing what she was feeling. She just felt that her mind was blank and she didn't want to think about anything. However, the scene that happened in the square just now kept replaying in her mind, making her feel more and more uncomfortable. After thinking about it, she suddenly had an idea. Why don't I go to Princely Mansion to take a look? Ever since she came to the Imperial City, she knew that Rong Xiu had been conferred the title of Prince Li and was living in Princely Mansion. Hence, she wanted to visit him. But at that time, she held on to her status and felt that she was being too proactive, so she didn't go. But now, she didn't want to care so much. She couldn't explain why she suddenly had this idea, but she couldn't help but walk toward Princely Mansion. Even though she didn't go to Princely Mansion personally, she had thought about the location many times. She was worried that people would recognize her, so she found a secluded place and changed into a cloak to cover her figure completely. She also put on a hood, covering her entire body tightly. Even if someone walked toward her, they wouldn't recognize her if they didn't look closely. After she was done, she continued walking toward Princely Mansion. When she was a short distance away from Princely Mansion, she realized that many people seemed to have gathered there. Outside Princely Mansion's walls, there were 3 layers of people as if they were watching a show. Situ Xingchen was very surprised. Princely Mansion is where the prince lives. Why are these commoners so presumptuous and all standing here? I don't know how Princely Mansion servants are doing their jobs. They can't even do such a small thing. Situ Xingchen took 2 steps forward, wanting to see what was going on, but she quickly smelled the stench of those people's sweat, which made her feel uncomfortable and disgusted. She stood there, but her legs seemed to be fixed, and she didn't go forward. No matter what, she didn't want to push through the crowd and walk through them. It's just a small show. Thinking of this, she turned around and planned to leave. But the moment she turned around, she heard a few discussions from the crowd. I really don't know what Princely is thinking. These clothes are still fine. Why did he throw them away? Yeah. Looking at the material of the clothes, all of it was extremely precious. What we're burning is shining silver. But that dress is really good. Even the cloud patterns on it are especially exquisite. What a pity. Upon hearing those words, Situ Xingchen's heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly turned around, wanting to squeeze into the crowd to take a look. However, the people in front of her were all gathered together, and she wasn't willing to use her origin power to cause too much of a commotion. She stood on tiptoe and took a few glances. She could barely see the guards of Princely's mansion standing in a circle, and there was a red flame dancing in the air. More than that, there was nothing to see. Helpless, she could only whisper, "Excuse me." The few men in front were a little impatient, but when they turned around, they saw a slender woman standing behind them. Even though she was wearing a cloak and a hood, her voice was gentle and pleasing to the ear. It was obvious that she was a beauty. Looking at the clothes she's wearing, it seems to be Star Luo Academy's uniform. It seemed like the students of Star Luo Academy were here to join in the fun. The few men glanced at each other, and an obscure light flashed in their eyes. Then, they immediately stepped aside. Very quickly, there was a path in the middle. Situ Xingchen's entire mind was on the scene, so she didn't notice the few people's expressions at all. When she finally endured the pungent smell and walked inside, she was immediately stunned by the scene in front of her. She saw a gigantic black metal bucket on the ground in the middle, and a ball of fire was burning fiercely inside. Under the flames, she could clearly see the embroidered clothes. She immediately saw the cloud pattern at the corner of the topmost piece of clothing. Under the burning fire, it quickly turned black and curled up. Her heart instantly felt as if it had been harshly clawed, and a strong sense of uneasiness surged in her heart. Look at how useless you are. What kind of status does Princely have? He just threw a few pieces of clothing. What's there to be upset about? It's fine if he gave these clothes to us too. What are you thinking about? Are you worthy of wearing Princely's clothes? Besides, that person has always been sick. Who would know about these clothes? The soft discussions around Situ Xingchen reached her ears, but she didn't react as she dazedly stared at the burnt clothes. Beside the metal bucket, there were many more. Yan Qing stood beside the metal bucket and ordered the guards to throw the remaining clothes in. His cold face was expressionless as usual. His Highness said that all the clothes with this cloud pattern are to be burned. Don't leave a single one behind. If you find another one in the residence and dirty His Highness's eyes, you won't be able to bear the consequences. Yes. The guards didn't know the reason, but they did as they were told seriously. But when Situ Xingchen heard this, it was as if she was struck by lightning. Burn all the clothes with this cloud pattern? Doesn't Rong Xiu like this the most? He even drew this pattern himself. Why did he suddenly? Her entire body froze, and the blood in her body seemed to have frozen at this moment. Cloud pattern, yes, because I like him. I secretly drew the cloud pattern and embroidered it on my clothes. When I'm free, I often stare at the cloud pattern on my clothes in a daze as if I'm seeing him. I even embroidered it on the sleeves of the academy uniform I'm wearing. Rong Xiu saw it? His eyes have always been sharp. How can he not see it? Just because she had embroidered this cloud pattern, he wanted to burn all the similar clothes? What did that person say just now? He said that he's afraid of dirtying his eyes? Does he hate me so much that he won't even wear these clothes because of a cloud pattern and wants to burn them completely? Situ Xingxin's limbs turned cold, and her heart seemed to have been harshly dug out and thrown into the snow. It was bone-chilling. She was so cold that she shivered, but hot tears silently rolled down her face. I've never been humiliated like this in so many years. At that moment, she almost felt as if her clothes were engulfed by the flames, causing her entire body to hurt from the burning. Situ Xingxin's gaze stiffly turned. There were still quite a lot of clothes piled up beside the metal bucket, and people were continuously bringing more from Princely Mansion. I don't want them all anymore. Situ Xingxin couldn't bear to watch this any longer. She turned around, rushed out of the crowd, and quickly left. The crowd was crowded, and everyone was watching the show. Hence, no one cared about her small actions. Only the few men who made way for Situ Xingxin looked at each other and silently left, chasing after her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.